Hi, this is Aman from Blue Byte Systems, and I would like to thank you for joining me today for this long form video on PDMShell. If you don't know what PDMShell is, it is a command line tool similar to PowerShell or CMD, and it helps you to automate mundane tasks in PDM. I want to take you through multiple examples on how to use the shell tool. So let's get started. All right, I'm going to start PDMShell on my other screen. So I'll type in here PDMShell and I'll drag it over to the main screen shortly. All right. So by default in my session here, it shows that I'm actually logged into my test vault here. I'm actually using PDMShell 3.0.20. If you already have PDMShell installed, then please make sure to use the latest version. If you don't, please head over to pdmshell.com where you could download it for free. Once you've had it installed, you could open it obviously and then go to the settings by clicking on the button at the top right here, and then choose the vault that you want to log into automatically if you want this feature to be enabled, as well as enabling the IntelliSense by checking this checkbox right here. Right now, I'm going to write the login command one more time just to show you how to log in to your vault through the shell. I'm going to start typing login, and you can see the autocomplete taken over here. So I'll press tab to complete and then dash. Auto means that I'm going to piggyback of the existing PDM connection that I already have. And then vault name here, dash vault name allows me to select the vault view that I would like to log into. And these are the available vault views in this local client. And I'm logged in here as admin. I can press Ctrl on my keyboard and then zoom in and out of the output area here. And this will help me or increment the font size. We can play around with this to get it to render as large as we need it to. In our example, we're going to start by creating a folder called speaker where we'll move a bunch of files from an outside source to our vault. So I'll start by using the command mkdir, which is make directory, and then I'll type in here the name of the folder that I would like to create. So now this creates a new folder called speaker on or in the root of my vault, because this is where I'm logged in right now. I can type in the command cd to change the directory, and I'll type in here speaker, and this will navigate to the speaker directory. You can see this ID right here, which is the PDM internal ID that represents a folder or a project. I can now type in the dar, which is directory command, to list the content of my directory. This will list files and subfolders as well, but we can see that the current directory here is empty, so there isn't a lot we can do here. I can also type in cd ... and this will take me back one level, or if I've navigated through multiple levels down in my vault, then I could type in cd and then // here just to go back to the root level. I can also type in cls, which will clear my console. On my C drive, I have a folder called source. This folder contains a bunch of files that I would like to move to the speaker folder that we just created. So I've got the speaker assembly, its drawing, and a bunch of parts here. There's also a macro folder that I'll use later to rebuild the assembly once we have it added into the vault. Now, to add files, we'll use the addtovault command. This command allows us to be able to add a single file or multiple files from outside source. So I'll type in here addtovault, and then I'll specify the minimum parameter, which is the source. This will be the directory from which we want to add our files. And I can also specify the directory where we want to deposit our files. So this will be the speaker directory. And then I can say that I would like to use a search if I have a source directory that contains many documents and I don't want to add every single document from the source directory. So this is a simple Windows search query. I can ignore any existence, so this will ignore existing files in PDM so we don't overwrite them. And I can update the references or use a recursive search. This is relative to the search parameter here. CSV allows us to be able to save the output of our add process if I'm adding hundreds or even thousands of files to see which ones added versus the ones that did. For now, I'm going to keep things pretty simple, and I'm just going to add the source directory or the content of the source directory, just the top level files. We're not going to be adding the macro, and we're going to have those files be copied and added to our vault in the speaker directory. So I'll press enter, and PDMShell takes care of the rest here pretty quickly. Done. Now if I navigate over to the speaker directory and I type in the dir command, I'll see that we've got about 6 items maybe. We'll see here. Yes, 6 items. These items are the files that came from the source directory, right? So it's the assembly, the drawing, and all the parts. You can see the type of the item, which means either a file or a subdirectory or a subfolder, as well as the check-in status. This is currently being checked out by myself, the admin, as well as the local version and whatever is on the server. So 1.1, this means that we've got a locally cached version, as well as the latest revision. This is the PDM revision, not to be confused with the revision that you see on the data card. So this is the revision from the version tab that's associated with the state. We're going to set this later on, so stick around till the end of this tutorial. Now what I want to do is to use the dir command one more time, and I'm going to specify a parameter called columns. The columns parameter allows me to add multiple columns to the listing. I could add one column or multiples, and those columns are going to be associated with data card variables. I'm going to type in here, for example, description, and I'll put here a comma, and then type, for example, document number, which I know is a variable that I have on my data card. I press enter. This is going to list all of the files on my speaker assembly, and I can see their descriptions, and I can see their document numbers. This is everything in the add tab. I can also see the PDM internal ID, the hexadecimal representation of that ID, but also the archive path. This is the path on the archive server where you can find speaker_frame.sldprt. This is very useful for PDM administrators. Now, I could also use another parameter called CSV, which allows me to export the listing to a CSV file, which I'm going to call speaker here. And once I run this command, the CSV file will be added to my vault in the current directory, which is speaker directory. Then I'm able to open it and edit it if I need to. If I type in start followed by space, then the file name, in my case here, is going to be speaker.csv, and press enter. This will open the CSV file in whatever program I have associated with the CSV extension. So in my case, this is going to open up in Microsoft Excel, and I can just convert it. This is pretty cool. We could actually make some changes to this document that will prove useful later on. For now, I'm simply going to close it, but we'll come back to this document in just a minute. I'm just gonna say don't save. I actually have the ability to use a command called setvar that allows me to set the value of a variable on a data card for a file or many files. So I'll type in here setvar, and I'll say that I'm going to use a search parameter. Now this search parameter exists in many PDMShell commands. It allows you to be able to execute the command on the results from that search operation. In here, I'm going to specify the PDM wildcard for the search, which will be the percentage sign here .sld, and this is going to allow me to search for every single SolidWorks file in the current directory. I could make this search recursive if I want to by including the recursive parameter here. And I could also add more information about my search by specifying that I want the name to be equal to this. But I could add a semicolon here and type locked equal true, which will only search and find the files that are checked out. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep things pretty simple and leave everything to search for all the SolidWorks parts or all the SolidWorks documents. And if you need more information about advanced search, then feel free to go to pdmshell.com and take a look at the article entitled Advanced Search. It will have more information about how to craft more complicated search queries. Now for the setvar, I'm going to say that I want to target the variable called description, and I'm kind of not too happy about the description that I'm seeing right here. Some files have description, others don't. I'm going to change this description to be the document name. In here, I can also specify the value of the description that I want to set for all the items that are going to come out of my search. I could hard code a value, which is not ideal, but I can actually use something called dynamic placeholders, which are another article that you can find on PDMShell.com, that allows you to evaluate certain dynamic placeholders against the search result. So right here, if I type in name of that extension, this will evaluate to the name of the file with that extension. I could actually type in here curly braces and specify another variable that I want to bring from the data card. So you can see how you could actually move things within the same file's data card, one variable to another. So we'll keep things pretty simple, and we'll specify here that we want the name without the extension. Also going to specify that I would like the formatting to be uppercase. And I'll press enter to start my command. And you'll see here that this is being set to every single configuration by default, and all the descriptions have now been set. To see the output, I can export that one more time using the dir command, specifying a CSV parameter for the output, and we'll press enter here, and that is going to list our files one more time and save everything to a CSV file. I can press my arrow key, my up arrow key on my keyboard, and go through the history of the commands. Press here start, or press enter to start the CSV file. I'll click on convert, and I can zoom in here, and you can see that we have all the old names here. I'm just going to remove the underscore from every single one of them, and then I'm going to remove the archive, the name, the archive path, as well as the hexadecimal, because we're going to use the CSV file here in a minute. I'm going to use the ID as the document number. Ctrl S here to save. Now that the changes have been saved to my CSV, I'm going to commit those changes back into my vault by using the checkin command. So checkin, and then dash file path, and then speaker.csv. I don't technically need to specify dash file path because it is considered the default parameter if we're only specifying one single parameter. So this will check in our CSV file back into the vault. Now there is another useful command that allows you to set the data card of a file, set multiple variables on that data card from a source. So you're setting the multiple data card variables for multiple files. So the command is setvarfromsource, and you only need to specify the source file for this command, which is in our case is the CSV file. So speaker.csv. I'll press enter, and our command is going to run through the source file and then set the data card variables for every single one of our files. Now if I want to list the output again, I can do that with a dir command, but I could also use the search command, and with the search command I can specify the columns are going to be description and document number, and I could say that I want my search query to be equal to only SOLIDWORKS files. This is awesome. We've been successful in setting everything for our data cards. What we could do now is we can actually rebuild these files. For that, I've created a macro, and it exists in the source folder under the macro folder. This macro is called rebuild. And what this macro does is that it rebuilds the active document in SOLIDWORKS, and then it adds a property called less build or less rebuild, and adds a date to that document, and it saves the changes. Before we reuse the command associated with running a SOLIDWORKS macro, we need to be able to add our macro to our vault through PDMShell. So I'm going to use the same command as addtovault, and in the source, we have prior used a directory as a source. This time we're going to use a file path, and it is called rebuild.swp. And since I'm already in the speaker directory, I don't have to specify the target directory. So I'll press enter here, and this is going to add my rebuild macro. I'm going to check it in pretty quick here. So rebuild.swp, and that checks my macro back into the vault. Now I'm going to use the runsw macro, which is a command in PDMShell that allows you to run a macro on a file or many files. So I'll type in here sw run macro. I'll specify the file path, which will be the file path to my macro. And then here I could specify the files that I would like to run the macro on through the search query. So I'll specify that I want this to only rebuild the SOLIDWORKS files. I'll say that I would like to have a specified timeout of 500 seconds per file. So if SOLIDWORKS does not launch or be able to rebuild or execute the macro in 500 seconds, run SOLIDWORKS macro command will terminate the SOLIDWORKS instance and consider that run or that file to be a failure, which we could save to a CSV file right here. We can also skip a number of files in our search operation. We can also say that we only want to process 5 or 6 files using count in our search operation. So we'll keep things pretty simple, and we're just gonna run our macro on all of these SOLIDWORKS files with a 500-second timeout. And this is going to rebuild our files and then save a custom property in the files that will show up later on the data card. So let's press enter, and this is going to open up SOLIDWORKS on my screen and run this macro. Now it needs what is important for the macro is to have a main subroutine, and that main subroutine needs to be in a module that it's named after the macro name. In our case here, our macro is called rebuild.swp, and then the module needs to be called the name of the macro and then rebuild one. And that's the requirement for using the run SOLIDWORKS macro command. SOLIDWORKS is now opening, and then it's going to start processing all of our files. Fantastic. All of our files have been rebuilt, right? Let's check our files back into the vault. So I'll do checkin, and I'll use the search parameter specifying that I only want to check in the SOLIDWORKS files. Press enter here, and that should check in our files here pretty quickly. The checkin command here uses the default behavior. So whatever PDM is configured, it will use the check-in process here. You can see that the default behavior has it configured so that when you check in a drawing, all of the references get checked in, which is awesome. I can actually now do a dir and add the last rebuild. I think the column name is called last rebuild, if not last build. We'll see here if the value is correct. Fantastic. You can see the date here for the last rebuild data card value. Now moving on, we have rebuilt our files. Let's just create the step files from our parts. And we can do that with the export command. I'm going to create a directory first called step, and this is the directory where we're going to add our step files. Now I'm going to use the export command, which allows me to spin up an instance of SOLIDWORKS, obviously the latest instance of SOLIDWORKS, and export our files to whatever extensions that we want. I'm obviously going to use the search where I'm going to specify here that I only want the parts, so our wildcard plus dot and then the SLDPRT extension, and then I also want the target directory to be the step directory. The name, this is going to be the name of the target file, where I need to specify here name with that extension, and I can also add the revision if I want to. So name with that extension, and let's add the revision as well, space revision. I don't need to add the extension because PDMShell takes care of that. And then the target extension that I want to target is going to be the step extension, and I can choose a timeout of 600 seconds per part. I'm going to press enter, and this is going to launch SOLIDWORKS one more time, open our parts, and then export them to step in the step directory. Also be mindful that the revision, this is going to be coming from the add tab on the data card. Awesome, that was pretty quick. So now I can navigate to my step folder, and to do that, we're going to use again the change directory command. So cd step, enter. Now within the step directory, I can do a simple search for example, to list all of the files that are here. And you'll notice something, there are no files. This is because I don't have the step extension added to the auto add for whatever specified extensions I have in my settings. So now that means I need to add the files from the source directory, which is the step folder inside of our vault. So let's do that. addtovault source. This time it's going to be the step folder, which I'll have to copy the name of the vault for. So I'll get the assembly again, vault name, and then it's under source and then under step. And this is going to add all of the step files to my vault. Command has completed. So now if I go see something again, source/step. So if I do cd up, and then we'll cd one more tied to the speaker directory, and maybe we can check in all the files. there are no files. So let's see here. What did we miss? Addtovault, addtovault. Let's quickly here check the step folder in File Explorer, just as a quick sanity check to see if our files are added. And our files are actually added, but they are local files, right? So what we'll do is that we'll call the addtovault command again. And it seems that I actually missed the directory, so it's actually speaker/step. So I apologize about that. Let's run that one more time, and that should add all of our step files. So I can go back now and check everything back into the vault using the checkin command. So here I'm using checkin-search and then the wildcard. And I'm pretty sure I'm navigated here to my step directory. Press enter, and that takes care of that. And it's going to check our files back into our vault. Awesome. All of our files have been checked in. I can go back now to my speaker directory, where I actually want to rename all of my files to use the document number. Before I do that, I need to use the clearcache command before I use the rename command. And this is kind of a best practice. Whenever you're about to rename a file, make sure, or a number of files in a folder, make sure to have your local cache cleared. And also, if there are other people that are using files in that folder, make sure that they have the local cache cleared and all their files are in that particular folder are checked in. So I'll go up one level to the root of my vault, and I'm going to use the clearcache command that allows me to target a folder. In this case, it's going to be the speaker folder. The speaker folder has its cache cleared. So I can cd and change directory to the speaker folder, and I'll use the dir command just to list the content of my speaker directory. And you'll see here in a minute that through the revision or the version column, there's a question mark telling us, hey, that there aren't any local copies in this directory. Now I could use the rename command, which has a search parameter. Most commands in PDMShell have search parameters. I am going to target only the SOLIDWORKS file, so I'll use the wildcard.sld, and then I need to specify the value. This is going to be the name of, or the new name of our file. To get more information about dynamic placeholders, please go to pdmshell.com and take a look at the specific article for dynamic variables. You could also type in help dash command and then rename, and this is going to navigate you in your browser to the article on the pdmshell.com, and you'll see plenty of information about value evaluation, and some other commands here actually do have video tutorials. So this is one way to take a look at the documentation pretty quickly. I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna paste my rename command. So we're going rename search. We're searching for every single SOLIDWORKS file, and we're gonna use a combination of two things. So we're gonna use the placeholder document number, and I need to make sure that I add the extension here as well. So this is very important. So whenever you're renaming, you need to add the extension of the file. There isn't else that I need to do. I'll just press enter here, and this is going to rename all of our files to their document numbers. Everything here has been renamed to their document numbers. If we now take a quick look, although we don't have to, but we take a quick look at File Explorer, you'll see that all of our files have been renamed correctly. If I click on any of these files, you will be able to see that there are no local copies, but also there's no version pretty much on the version tab. But there's actually a version here on the add tab. I can see that information. It's on the add tab, so I can see that there is a revision, but the revision is on the data card. It's not on the version tab. So we want to be able to pull that revision from the data card and put it in the version tab in the PDM revision. And PDMShell has an awesome command for that called setrevision. Before we do that, we're going to use a quick command called get. And this is going to locally cache whatever version we want from our files. Get coupled with search is pretty powerful. This is gonna locally cache all whatever files we search for, but here it's gonna locally cache only the SOLIDWORKS files. And then if I tell the get command that I want version -0, this will locally cache the latest version of all of our files. So let's go through that, and it should do that here pretty quickly. Nice. Now we can now use the setrevision command to pull our variable or pull our revision from the data card and put it in the version tab. So setrevision dash, you probably guessed it, search. We'll do the same thing here for our search query, only searching SOLIDWORKS documents. And then for the value parameter, we can specify hard-coded value. We can tell it to go for the next revision, which we won't do now. We can tell it also to go with another wildcard for the previous revision, and you can also do initial, and that will give you the first revision number. In here, we're just gonna pull from the data card, and we're using the curly brackets for that. So this is gonna pull the revision from the data card and put it in the version tab. So I'll press enter here, and the setrevision command takes care of the rest. Fantastic. So now if we do a quick refresh in File Explorer, although we don't need to do so, I can pull that over here and you can see that we've got a PDM revision. This is only possible if the state that the files are in is associated with revision component or revision numbers. Now the last thing we need to do here is to move our files to the workflow and push them to the next state where somebody else can review them. To do that, we could use the command called transition. But before I transition, I would like to see some biographical information about our files. So in here, I'm gonna go up one level because my autocomplete list is not refreshed. So I'll just cd back up and down to the speaker directory. And I'm going to use the command print file path, and I'll just pick whatever part I want. And you'll see some biographical information about our part, the file name, the local path, the folder, the PDM internal ID for the file, as well as the folder hexadecimal ID, as well as the archive path. Most important one is actually here is the transitions. It's saying here that I could use the transition submit for review, which is the transition number, or with the internal ID of 18. And this is going to take my files from initiated to under review. So I'll do that. I'm going to do transition, and then I'll do obviously the search parameter here. So I'll search for all the SOLIDWORKS file, and then I want to take all of these files that are going to be outputted from my search through the transition ID number 18, and press enter. And this is going to transition all of our files to under review when another team member can actually perform the necessary actions of review. This is fantastic. We've done quite a bit in just a few moments here. We can even send a specific user a message saying that like the work has been complete. For example, you send a message to Daniel saying you can review the files, and that message has been now sent to Daniel telling them, hey, you can review the files. This was a man from BlueByte Systems doing a pretty comprehensive demo of PDMShell, but there are actually a lot more commands than the one that we've shown here today. If you type in help, you'll see that you've got access to close to 55 commands that you could see here, 54 commands that could help you automate your PDM workflow pretty extensively. You could run this directly from the shell, but you could also write scripts for the shell or even trigger the shell to run from CMD, a workflow transition, or even dispatch. If you need help with that, please reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or reach out to us at BlueByte Systems. You can go to our website, bluebytesystems.com, and go to the contact page, and we'll be very happy to help you. Thank you.